In my family, I was the one who paid for everything and got credit for nothing. My younger brother was the golden one. He always had been. When we were kids, he was the one my parents bragged about at dinner parties. His grades, his baseball trophies, his potential. I was just the older sister who got decent grades and stayed out of trouble, which apparently didn't count for much. Staying out of trouble wasn't an achievement in my family. It was the bare minimum, and the bare minimum wasn't worth celebrating. My brother's name is Damon. He's 29 now, 3 years younger than me, and he has the kind of easy confidence that comes from spending your whole life being told you're special. He smiles at people and they believe him immediately. He's the kind of person who can show up 40 minutes late and have everyone laughing within 5 minutes of walking through the door. My parents think he hung the moon. I'm a nurse. I've been working at the same hospital for 6 years, night shifts mostly because the differential pay is better, and I've always been practical about money. I'm not rich, but I'm careful. I have a savings account that I've been building since I was 22. I don't take vacations I can't afford. I pack my lunch. I know exactly what I have and what I owe and what I'm working toward. Damon has never once packed his lunch. He's been engaged to his fiancée, Priya. Wait, no. Let me be honest about what she was to me back then. I didn't really know her. We'd had maybe 10 conversations total over the 2 years they'd been together. She seemed fine. A little distant, maybe, but I assumed that was just nerves around the family. I wasn't close enough to either of them to have an opinion that mattered. The engagement was announced at Christmas. My parents cried. My mother hugged Damon for what felt like 4 minutes straight. My father clapped him on the back and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "This is the proudest day of my life." I was standing 6 feet away holding a plate of cookies I'd baked from scratch that morning. That's just how it was. I wasn't bitter about it, or at least I'd gotten good at telling myself I wasn't. The wedding planning started almost immediately. His fiancée came from a family with ideas about weddings, and those ideas were expensive. The venue she wanted was a converted farmhouse about an hour outside the city, the kind of place that gets booked 2 years in advance and costs more per night than most people's rent. The catering she had in mind was a farm-to-table operation that charged by the guest and didn't negotiate. The florist she wanted had done 3 celebrity weddings. I heard all of this at a family dinner in February, about 6 months before the wedding date they'd chosen. My mother was practically vibrating with excitement, describing the venue, the menu, the floral arrangements. My father kept nodding along with this look on his face like he was already composing his toast. I did the math in my head while my mother talked. I couldn't help it, it's what I do. And the numbers were not adding up. After dinner, I helped my mother with the dishes, and that's when she brought it up. "We need to talk about the finances," she said, scraping a plate into the trash without looking at me. "Okay," I said. "Your father and I have set aside some money for the wedding, but it's not going to cover everything." She paused. "We were hoping you might be able to contribute, given that you're in a good place financially." I was 31 years old and had been in a good place financially because I had spent the last decade being extremely disciplined about money. That discipline had a name, and it was my condo down payment fund. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. She named a number. I put down the dish towel. "Mom, that's almost all of my savings." "I know it's a lot," she said, "but it's your brother's wedding. These things only happen once, and you know how much this means to him." She finally looked at me. "You've always been the responsible one. We've always been able to count on you." It sounds like a compliment the way she said it. It wasn't. I said I'd think about it. I went home that night and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I thought about the down payment. I thought about the apartment I'd been looking at, the neighborhood I wanted to live in, the life I'd been carefully constructing piece by piece. And then I thought about my mother's face when she said, "You've always been the responsible one." And I understood what that phrase actually meant in our family. It meant that being responsible was its own punishment. I transferred the money 3 weeks later, $94,000. I didn't tell anyone how much it was. I just did it quietly, the way I did everything. Over the following months, I was consulted on exactly nothing. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the photographer, all decided without me. I found out about the menu change from a cousin. I found out about the band through a group text I'd been accidentally left off of. I wasn't on the planning committee. I wasn't on the vendor contact list. I was the bank account that nobody talked about. The only time my input was ever solicited was when something went wrong and they needed more money. The florist quoted higher than expected. Could I cover the difference? The caterer required an additional deposit. Could I handle that? The venue needed a damage waiver that turned out to cost more than they'd budgeted. Could I? I could. I did. I kept a spreadsheet because that's how I'm wired, and by the time I got to the 3-month mark, the number on that spreadsheet made my stomach hurt. I asked my mother once, gently, if there was a plan for being paid back. She looked at me the way she always looks at me when I bring up money, like I've said something slightly obscene at the dinner table. It's family, she said. We don't keep score in this family. This was, of course, not true. We absolutely kept score. I had just somehow ended up on the wrong side of every tally. About 6 weeks before the wedding, I got a phone call from my mother on a Tuesday afternoon. I was just getting off a shift, still in the hospital parking lot, and I almost didn't pick up because I could feel, in the way you can feel these things with certain people, that the call was going to cost me something. We need to talk about the wedding, she said. Okay, I said. We've been thinking about the guest list and the photos, and look, your brother and his fiancée are really concerned about how things are going to look. The photos last forever, you know, and his future in-laws are very... She paused. They have a certain image of the family they're marrying into. I didn't say anything. I waited. You've been working so many nights, sweetheart, and we can see it on you. You look tired. We're not saying anything bad about you. We think it might be better if you weren't in the wedding party photos, just sat with the guests. It took me a moment to understand what she was saying. You're pulling me from the wedding party, I said. We're just adjusting the arrangement. I was never in the wedding party, I said. I wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid. You're talking about the general photos. You're saying you don't want me in the family photos. Silence. Mom, it's just for the photos, she said. You can still come. Of course you can still come. I drove home in a kind of stunned autopilot. I fed my cat. I made tea. I didn't drink. I sat on my couch and looked at the spreadsheet on my laptop and thought about how the people who had never once thanked me for any of it were now worried that my face would make the photos look wrong. 2 weeks later, my mother called again. This time, she didn't bother with the soft lead-in. We think it's better if you don't come to the wedding at all, she said. You can watch the live stream. We're setting one up. I said nothing. It's just that you've seemed stressed lately, and we don't want any tension at the wedding. You know how you can be sometimes. And frankly, your brother and his fiancée need this day to be perfect. There can't be any complications. What complications? I asked. My voice was very calm. I have a lot of practice at calm. You've been a little raw lately. Emotional. It's been noticeable. She paused. Honestly, sweetheart, we're a little worried about you. We think you might need some rest, some space to get yourself together. I understood then that this wasn't just about the wedding. They were rewriting me. They were building a narrative in advance, the way you might clear a path through a forest before you need to run through it. Are you going to tell people I'm not there? I asked. We'll just say you weren't feeling well. People don't need the details. 3 days later, I got a text from a family friend I'd known since childhood. It said, "Heard you're going through something. Hope you feel better soon. Prayers." I stared at it for a long time. I'm a nurse. I work in a hospital. I have a professional license. I have spent 6 years protecting. I know exactly what going through something means when it's said in a certain tone about a certain kind of person in a certain family. I knew what story was being told about me. I knew what room it was being told in, and I had just handed these people $94,000. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 6 a.m. and lay in my bed for a while. I thought about watching the live stream. I thought about doing exactly what they'd asked me to do, staying home, staying small, staying out of the way. It would be easy. It was what I'd always done. Then I got up and got dressed. I didn't go through the main entrance. The venue had a side entrance near the service corridor. I knew this because I had been CC'd on exactly one vendor email 6 months ago before they'd taken me off the chain. I knew the layout because I'd visited the venue during the initial booking, when my opinion still had some transactional value. I slipped in through the service entrance and found a quiet corner near the back of the venue's main hall, behind a large decorative column. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't triumphant. I was standing behind a column in the venue I paid for at a wedding I wasn't supposed to be at, watching my family pretend I didn't exist. For the first hour, I just watched. I watched my parents work the room, greeting guests, laughing loudly. I watched my mother hug his fiance's mother with the warmth she reserves for people she wants to impress. I watched my father make the rounds, that easy smile on his face. And then I heard it. My father was talking to a group of guests, older family friends, people I'd grown up around. I was maybe 12 feet away with the column between us. His voice carried. And our daughter, she's just going through a rough patch. You know how it is sometimes. She needed to step back, get some help. We're just grateful she's somewhere safe. A murmur from the group. Sympathetic sounds. It was hard for us, my father continued, his voice dropping into something that sounded like grief. But you have to love your children enough to get them the help they need, even when they resist it. I stood very still. He had just told a group of people who knew me, who had watched me grow up, who might talk to my colleagues or neighbors or anyone, that I was somewhere getting help. Inpatient help. The kind of help that ends careers if the wrong person hears about it in the wrong context. I am a nurse. I hold a license. I work with patients. I am subject to professional review. There are people at that wedding who could, with one phone call made in the spirit of concern, begin a process that would take years to untangle. My hands were shaking. I noticed that with a kind of clinical detachment, observed my own trembling like I was watching someone else's vitals. I thought about walking away. I thought about going back to my car and driving home and crying into a pillow and never speaking to any of them again. Part of me wanted to do exactly that. The part of me that had always found it easier to disappear than to fight. But there was another part of me, the part that had spent 6 years working night shifts and building something real and careful in mine, and that part said, no. I stayed where I was. I didn't know what I was waiting for. I just knew I wasn't leaving. About 30 minutes later, a young woman in a venue polo approached me. I'd seen her earlier. She seemed to be the event coordinator, checking things off a tablet. She looked a little tense. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Are you a member of the family?" "Yes," I said. She glanced around, then back at me. "I'm so sorry to bother you with this. I've been trying to reach whoever is listed as the primary account holder on the reservation, but I'm getting voicemail." She lowered her voice further. "We ran the card on file for the final balance. It's the card we have for the catering deposit, and it's been declined." I looked at her. "What card do you have on file?" She gave me the last 4 digits. That was my card. The card linked to the account I'd been drawing from for the last 8 months. I knew without checking that the balance was somewhere in the low hundreds after everything I put through for this wedding. "I'm the account holder," I said. She blinked. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I was told the account contact was..." She checked her tablet. "I was told to direct financial questions to the parents of the groom." "Who directed you to do that?" She hesitated. "That was the instruction when the account was set up. But your name is on the primary reservation." I took a breath. I thought about the spreadsheet on my laptop. I thought about my father's voice, low and grieving, telling a circle of family friends that his daughter was somewhere getting help. "What's the remaining balance?" I asked. She told me. I thought about it for exactly 4 seconds. "I'm not going to be covering that," I said. "The card on file is mine, and I'm revoking authorization for any further charges. You'll need to collect from whoever made the arrangement to use it." She stared at me. The reception is currently in progress. The catering staff is here. The bar service is running. I understand," I said. "I'm sorry to put you in this position. That's not my intention. But the account is mine, and I'm telling you clearly that I am not authorizing any further charges against it." Her voice dropped very low. "I'm going to need to inform the family." "That's your call to make," I said. "But when you do, you might want to bring your documentation, the reservation contract, the deposit receipts, all of it, because I'd like whoever you speak with to have the full picture." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, very quietly, "Is there something I should know?" I thought about my father's voice behind the column. I thought about the text from my childhood family friend. I thought about the word help and what it could mean and who it could reach. My name is on that reservation, I said. Ask whoever you speak with to explain that. She walked away toward the main event space. I stayed where I was. It didn't take long. I heard the shift in the room before I saw it. The kind of shift that happens at a party when something has changed in the molecular structure of the air, when the music doesn't stop but everyone's attention moves. I stepped out from behind the column. My mother was speaking in a rapid, low voice to the event coordinator near the main doors. My father had materialized beside her. His fiancé's father was also there, which I hadn't expected. A tall, quiet man with the posture of someone who did not raise his voice but didn't need to. And then there was Damon's fiancé's older brother. I'd met him once at an engagement dinner, a corporate lawyer from Chicago, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. He was standing slightly apart, reading something on his phone. My mother saw me. The color drained from her face. "What are you doing here?" she said. It came out sharper than she'd intended, loud enough that a few nearby guests turned. "I was invited," I said, "by the venue. My name is on the reservation." "This is not the time. It's my card," I said, simply, clearly, loud enough for the people nearby to hear without shouting. "The card that's been funding this wedding for the past 8 months is mine. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the band, it's all in my name. I think the people responsible for the final payment should probably sort that out." My father took a step toward me. "You need to calm down." "I'm very calm," I said. "I've been extremely calm. For 8 months. The fiancé's brother looked up from his phone. He was looking at me now. "She paid for the wedding?" he asked. "Not to me, to my parents." My mother opened her mouth. "She did," the event coordinator said quietly. She had her tablet in front of her. "The primary account holder on this reservation is," she said my name, and all deposits and payments were processed through her account. "The card we have on file for the final balance is hers." The fiancé's brother was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Damon told us his parents were handling the finances. We were coordinating," my father said quickly. "She offered to help. She offered $94,000, I said. The number landed the way numbers do when they're real and specific and nobody expected you to say them out loud. The fiancé's brother put his phone in his pocket. He turned and walked back into the reception toward where I assumed his sister and Damon were standing. I don't know exactly what he said to them. I wasn't in the room. What I know is what happened next, which is that Damon came through the main doors about 4 minutes later looking like a man who had just been told something that rearranged his understanding of several things at once. He looked at my parents. He looked at me. He looked at the event coordinator, who was still holding her tablet. "Is it true?" he said. "Not to me, to them. Did she actually pay for all of it?" My mother started to say something about family and contributions and how these things are complicated. "The card," Damon said. "Is the card on file hers?" Silence. Something moved across his face. I recognized it distantly. It was the look of someone doing the same math I'd been doing for months, except they were doing it for the first time and arriving somewhere they didn't expect. "You told me your friends helped," he said to my parents. His voice was quiet. "You said a group of family friends had contributed. You never." He stopped. "It's not the time," my mother said. "It's exactly the time," he said. "It's the only time. Because after today, we're all going to go back to pretending." He looked at me. And for the first time in a long time, my brother looked at me like I was a person. "Did they tell you not to come?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Did they tell people that you were getting help somewhere?" "I heard Dad tell it to the Kavanaughs about an hour ago." Damon closed his eyes briefly. He opened them. He looked at our father. Our father was looking at the floor. I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that, because I think people expect this kind of moment to feel like winning, and it didn't feel like winning. It felt like grief. Like watching something you'd already accepted as lost finally get properly buried. The fiancé's brother reappeared with a calm, navigating kind of efficiency and took Damon gently aside. I heard him say something in a low voice about the rest of the day and we'll figure out the details later. He was sensible about it. He was looking out for his sister's wedding day, which was the right thing to do. The event coordinator looked at me. What would you like to do about the final balance? I thought about it. I'll cover it, I said. This isn't about ruining anyone's day. That was never what this was about. I looked toward where my parents were standing, very still, very quiet. I just needed the record to be clear. She nodded. She processed the payment. She thanked me. I found a chair near the back of the reception and I sat down and I watched the dancing for a while. Nobody came to tell me to leave. My mother passed me twice without making eye contact. My father didn't come near me at all. Damon found me later, near the end of the night, when the speeches were done and the cake had been cut and the band was playing something slow. He sat down next to me without saying anything at first. I didn't know, he said finally. I know you didn't, I said. How long has it been like this? The way they treat you? I thought about that for a moment. A long time, I said. Since we were kids, probably. It just got more expensive as we got older. He was quiet. Then, I'm sorry. I looked at him. My younger brother, the golden one, 32 years old, and sitting in a banquet chair in his wedding tuxedo, looking like he'd just learned something that couldn't be unlearned. Don't be sorry to me at the reception, I said. Be different. That's the only thing that would actually mean something. He nodded slowly. Whether he would manage that or not, whether any of this would actually change anything, I genuinely didn't know. I've been a nurse long enough to know that people almost always go back to the patterns they were raised inside. It takes real effort to break out of them. Real, sustained, uncomfortable effort. But he'd asked. That was something. I drove home that night with the windows down, the late summer air moving through the car. I was tired in a way that went past physical, the kind of tired that means something has finally been put down that you've been carrying for a very long time. I wasn't sure what came next. With my parents, with my brother, with the money I was never going to see again. But my name had been on that reservation, and when it mattered, in the room where it mattered, in front of the people who needed to hear it, the record had been made clear. That was enough. For that night, it was enough. I've thought a lot about the moment I decided not to walk back to my car. It wasn't dramatic. I wasn't standing there with fire in my eyes, ready to burn something down. I was tired. I was standing behind a column in a venue I paid for, listening to my father tell a group of family friends that his daughter was somewhere getting help, and all I felt in that moment was a very quiet, very clear refusal. Not anger, refusal. I think that distinction matters. There's a version of that night where I leave, where I absorb it the way I'd absorbed everything else for 32 years, and I drive home and cry and tell myself it's fine. I almost did that. The part of me that had been trained since childhood to stay small, to not cause a scene, to be the responsible one who never asks for anything. That part had a very strong argument for going home. But there's something that happens when you spent years being careful and honest and precise about the way you move through the world, and then you watch people use that carefulness against you. It builds. Not loudly. It builds the way water builds behind a dam, quietly, steadily, until one day the structure can't hold any more weight. What I did that night wasn't revenge. It was just the truth. My name was on the reservation. That was a fact. Facts don't require your permission to exist. What I've learned, really learned, not just intellectually understood, is that doing the right thing in private doesn't protect you from people who are willing to lie about you in public. Integrity isn't a shield. It's just what you are. And for a long time, I confused those two things. I thought that being good meant being safe. I thought that being reliable meant being valued. I kept paying, kept showing up, kept being the one people could count on because some part of me believed that eventually the ledger would balance. It doesn't balance on its own. That's the thing nobody tells you when you're young and careful and quietly doing everything right. The ledger only balances when you decide it does. When you stop waiting for someone else to acknowledge the weight you've been carrying and you just put it down, publicly, if necessary, clearly, without apology. That takes something. It takes knowing yourself well enough to trust your own account of things even when everyone around you is offering a different version. It takes being willing to say a number out loud, $94,000 in a room full of people, and not flinch because the number is real and you earned every cent of it. That's not stubbornness. That's clarity. and it takes the kind of endurance that doesn't get celebrated, the kind that looks like nothing from the outside. 6 years of night shifts, packed lunches, spreadsheets, savings accounts, until the moment when all of it suddenly matters. When the coordinator checks her tablet and your name is right there, exactly where you put it. Damon asked me to forgive him that night. I told him not to apologize, to be different. I meant it. Words spoken at a wedding reception, in a tuxedo with guilt fresh on your face. They're easy. Change is the hard part. Change requires all three things, and they have to work together, knowing what's right, being honest enough to see it clearly, and having the backbone to actually do it even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you something, even when it would be easier to just go back to the way things were. I don't know if Damon has it in him. I genuinely don't. But I know that I do. That night, driving home with the windows down, I wasn't happy exactly. I was something quieter than happy. I was whole.